ANC presidential canvassing is not yet in full swing, but about 6 names have already been touted as candidates for ANC presidency. Amidst these discussions is the ANC long-standing tradition. It came to light that the minutes of the party's 1949 conference unanimously adopted that the deputy president of the organization shall preferably succeed an outgoing president. Talking to us from our Hatfield studios in Pretoria is Professor Lesiba Tefo. He is the professor at the Institute of African Renaissance Studies at the University of South Africa. Prof, good morning to you and thank you so much for joining us here on the show.
Dumela Palesa and the listeners.
Thank you so much indeed, Prof, for coming through. Now, in January this year, President Jacob Zuma said it's not necessarily an ANC policy for a deputy to rise to president. But if it is not policy, it's a tradition that's been followed and carried over the years. How much binding do you personally think that this tradition is? More so if we consider the fact that it was noted in the minutes in 1949.
Yeah, the question is who's lying to who? Who is fooling who? Indeed, they talk about political education. They talk about the political school. In the minutes of 1949 in Morogoro, it stated that it is preferable, is prudent and desirable that the deputy should be the next in line. Granted, they have been practicing that over the years without any contradiction, until somebody tried to fault the process. And the victim supposedly was Jacob Zuma. Men and women within the organization stood up and said, we shall uphold, maintain, retain, and honor the tradition of the ANC. And Jacob Zuma shall be the next in line. Everything was done. Some threatened to kill on his behalf. Some threatened to unleash the tsunami, all because they thought the ANC constitution was being violated, the tradition, custom and practice was being violated. The next in line should be the deputy. Can it be Jacob Zuma? Can it be those who were around in 2007 in Polokwane? I heard Madam Nkosazana Zuma say, it is not policy, it's not tradition. How unfortunate. Perhaps all the more reason people think if she were to move into the State House, South Africa will be in for more of the same.
Yeah, it does indeed look like some are also worried within the ANC about this tradition. I mean, if we take into consideration the ANC's Secretary General's tweets that if the deputy does not succeed President Jacob Zuma, then the ANC will be in crisis.
He based this on what transpired in Polokwane in 2011. At the center, it was Jacob Zuma. It certainly cannot be Jacob Zuma, again, who will precipitate another split simply because of the wrong, but it's not a wrong interpretation. It's just a deliberate, disingenuous and malicious interpretation that should benefit a particular faction. We cannot say it is wrong. It is not wrong. They are just being disingenuous, and they are not about the people of South Africa, but about self-interest. Indeed, they are even harming their own organization. One day they will wake up as an ANC and say, where did we go wrong? When they are out of power and there is so much to be done before they can still revisit the State House.
But what significance has this tradition had over the years, Prof? Can it be challenged legally? I mean, yesterday we heard ANC presidential hopeful Dr. Nkosazana Zuma saying that there is no clause within the ANC constitution that clarifies that deputies must succeed presidents.
There is a country that I know of that is running its affairs successfully without a written constitution. It's called the Great Britain. It is succeeding, is doing well. The ANC has had this tradition and practice. You don't have to write it in black and white. And legal contracts, some are written, some are not written. Right? All that you need to do is to prove that you have been consistently behaving and conducting in a certain way and with agreement and consensus. There is nothing wrong, Palesa, for the ANC to amend its constitution. They must reach consensus as per their policy and say, now we change. Then we shall not have this debate. But for as long as that is not the case, those who say there is a tradition to be upheld, they enjoy my support.
And And how important is it really, Prof, to iron out this, more so at this particular stage within the ANC, with all that the party is going through? We heard an EC member, Bheki Cele, also saying that the tradition must be upheld.
The tradition must be upheld, but it must not be upheld at all cost. Right now, let them uphold the tradition. They will have time after the elections to amend the constitution. But it cannot be now, because there are those who stand to lose, there are those who stand to benefit, and there is a strong perception that I subscribe to, that those who want to violate this practice is because they fear that if they lose power, some of them have their hands dipped in debt up to their elbows, that the law might visit them and some of them may end up where they are not supposed to be. So to the extent possible, even if it is at the expense of the party, they will try to sustain and to work for the violation of the practice and tradition of the ANC. It's unfortunate that they don't have much time to mend ways, to self-correct and to do the right things. But it cannot be at this juncture that they want to amend the constitution directly or indirectly, advertently or inadvertently.
But why are there no formal discussions on this matter? I mean, we hear members talking aside the different gatherings. Like I said, Bheki Cele was talking in KwaZulu-Natal, Gwede Mantashe on Twitter. Yesterday, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and Sihle Zigalala also made their own mentions and says on this issue in the case that why is there no formal discussion around this matter?
There cannot be a formal discussion, my dear, simply because they are so factional to the core, that they are so factional as they don't trust each other. I mean, you have got the former Premier League. Now they are trying to include others. Even the 5 premiers that met a few days ago, they don't trust one another precisely because they represent factions within the party. They try to put a facade that says we are united, we are working for unity. But on the ground, that is not what is transpiring. I listen to Sihle Zigalala, I say to myself, but had he not availed himself, had he not helped manipulate the processes that unseated Senzo, surely he could have a higher moral ground when he speaks about unity, when he speaks about saving the organization. It cannot be that out of political expediency and opportunism, you violate the rules, and tomorrow you say when others want to do same, then you want to follow them. Live by those rules that you can will them to become a universal law.
Yeah, and you made mention of an important factor that I also wanted to touch on. The recent meeting of 5 premiers last week, we had the ANC chairperson in Mpumalanga, David Mabuza, calling for unity, and yet just yesterday, COSATU and SACP also announced their preferred candidate, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Yes, indeed. You see, if you listen to COSATU, you see SACP and others, they are saying, in the name of tradition, in the name of consistency, we shall go with Ramaphosa. And you say, by the way, yesterday, it was the Youth League, it was the Women's League that said, in the name of tradition, we shall go for Jacob Zuma. What transpired in the past 10 years? Human beings, sometimes we take them for granted, we think they are idiots, but they are much smarter than we think. I listened from the lady from Basidiso from Gauteng, and I just say, being a politician sometimes can really warp your mindset, because even when you see the good things being done, but if they are not in your personal interest, if you don't get to benefit as an individual, directly or indirectly, you almost are bound to say it is not right.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
and that's
politics.
That's the question that I posed to her but just a few minutes ago, to say that are they really taking this matter to court in the interest of the residents of Johannesburg, or is it a political game? And she said no, it's in the interest of the public.
Well, unfortunately, it is in the interest of political game. And remember, the literati, the intelligentsia of South Africa is located in the main in Gauteng. What are you saying about those people who voted against them? Was it not a vote of no confidence? Their failure in the first 10 years, they did well, I grant them that. But in the past 10 years, they failed the people dismally, and the people voted with their feet. And later on, they put their cross in the faces of the other parties. So unless you are saying we are not as intelligent as you think you are. But I can quote one man called Oliver Tambo who once said, the people, never take them for granted, are much smarter than you think you are. One day you might think you are leading them, only to find that behind you there is nobody you are leading. You are all working by yourself.
All right. Prof, 6 presidential hopefuls, campaigns are going on. Do you think that the campaigns are intensifying? What are you reading between the lines between these 6 presidential hopefuls?
I have my own conspiracy, and it does. But every week, I tend to believe that everything that is happening within the organization, especially in the negative, playing itself even in the cause, is to the advantage of Cyril Ramaphosa. I said, and I shall repeat, that I see Lindiwe Sisulu being the deputy. I put a theory that says most of them are doing this in order to weaken the Nkosazana Zuma faction. They are doing this on the eve of the elections. I suspect most of them will retreat and say, in the interest of unity, in the interest of saving this glorious movement, we step down and we throw our lot in favor of Cyril Ramaphosa.
All right, well,
I shall maintain this line until I'm convinced otherwise.
We've seen the SG tweeting that should Cyril Ramaphosa make it, she must choose a female to be his deputy. But we'll leave it at that for this morning, Prof. Thank you so much for coming through. All right, well, there you have it. That was Professor Lesiba Tefo discussing with us whether the long-standing ANC presidential succession followed by the ANC is just a tradition or policy based on what has been playing out, of course, in the political sphere as the ANC heads to its national elective conference in December. We're taking a break here.